What is up, guys? Welcome back to Flow State. It is me, Luke, and once and always I'm joined by my illustrious co-host, Mr. Adam Smith. And Adam, man, we're on episode 5 already, and I can't believe we've been recording for this long. It's been actually 6 weeks of recording I was thinking about today, and that's a relatively long time considering this was just something we kind of put together or started chatting about just before Christmas. So I think that's awesome. And look, just before we get into the podcast itself, I want to start with a thank you again to everyone who's listened to the pod and has given us feedback. We've had some really nice messages. Even just now, me and Adam were talking about off air how we've had some really lovely comments from followers, friends, clients, all of the above, and it's really nice. And again, if you do enjoy the pod and find what we're saying valuable, I can't believe I'm saying that we're giving people valuable information, but we are. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, follow, all of the above, because it does really, really go a long way in supporting us and the pod. So thank you for that. But look, I think it's safe to say that me and Adam have had pretty exciting weeks. Adam, would you say?
Yeah, you could say exciting. Thanks a million for the intro, Luke. It's great speaking to you again. And yeah, I just want to reiterate what you said. Thank you to those who have sent us some really nice messages, not just over the last week, but over the last month, I suppose, that we have now established this new routine, which I've been really enjoying. Friday mornings look very different to how they used to. Getting up, sort of recording first thing in the morning. And apologies if anyone that's watching, I look like I've just got out of bed, because I have. But yeah, I really enjoy it. It's changed my Friday routine, as I say, and it's a lovely way to kick off like the weekend almost. I feel like it gets to 8 a.m. here and I've already been productive on a Friday, and yeah, it's great. So thanks to those as well that, as I say, have sent those lovely messages. Really delighted that not only, as you say, look, have we provided some value for those listeners, but we've also, I think, sort of talked about some really relatable things, especially with last week's podcast and the chats about sort of food and body image and our struggles, that maybe a lot of people didn't realize that we had. And I think it's just so important to remember that I think everyone is struggling with things, and talking about them definitely helps. Even speaking with you about them last week, I just feel lighter when I do that. So yeah, it's been good, mate. And it's been an exciting week, as you mentioned.
Can I just add and say that although it is the morning for you, I really like the hair that's going on. It looks kind of windswept. It just really works. See, if mine does that, it genuinely looks messy, and I'm like, nah, it doesn't work. But this thing you've got going on, it's windswept, man. It's fantastic.
Windsweep's probably the word, mate. It's not in brilliant shape here right now. I'm actually getting my haircut today. I usually get the haircut before I race, and looks like I still don't know for sure if I'll be racing. By the time this podcast comes out, you guys will know whether I have raced or not. But currently I'm probably not racing. But yeah, the hair is definitely in that bedhead state. But yes, you mentioned that I've had an exciting week. Exciting is definitely one word for it.
Why don't you, I mean, like, I know you posted on your Instagram midweek, and in fact, that's how I saw/heard about it, graphic post alert. But why don't you kind of give people an update on what's been happening with you, mate?
Yeah, so training was going brilliantly, and as I said to you last week, I think after we finished recording, I think it was on the recording, I can't remember, but I was feeling like I was really ready to taper, just to bring the training down, have a down week, freshen up, and hopefully race well this Sunday and like the build to London Marathon. The cumulative fatigue was starting to take hold, but yeah, I guess my body decided to take that a little bit more literally and sort of force me into some more rest. So should I cover kind of the week briefly and then sort of touch on Sunday? Is that the best way to approach this?
I feel like for the sake of just sheer theatre for the theatrics, why don't you lead into it and then give us the climax, man? What's going on?
Alrighty. I was out in the Sunday run, Sunday long run, 22 miles planned. Joined up with a couple of lads here that I run with regularly, and yeah, it was ticking along just basically did a nice kind of easy long run on Sunday because I trained Saturday morning and did a decent session Saturday morning and knew I was going to be racing this Sunday coming. So 7 days out, I didn't want to completely flog myself, but I still wanted to get some good miles in ahead of London. So 22 miles on the plan, headed out round the country roads here, was about 19 miles in, just about to touch on 20 miles, and I'd already started to pick up the pace a little bit. I'd left those two lads maybe at about 18 miles to run the last 5 miles, kind of like progressive in like a tempo. And yeah, I was just coming around this corner, down a hill, round the corner. If you watch my Instagram story the day before yesterday, which was Monday, I did a bit of a reenactment, but came down that hill, which I come down almost every day on my run, and took the tight corner, and I just took it too tightly. I basically run across this corner every single day, and there's some loose mud or some like dried mud on that corner, and I've probably never even realised that it can be slippy. But yeah, basically as I came around that corner, the body went under me. I think I was down on the ground and popped up again, probably for fear that someone had seen me fall.
It's always the ego, isn't it? The ego's like, yeah, nah, no one saw that, bro. Just carry on, get moving again.
Yep. But I popped up again, and I was just standing on the spot, and then kind of horrified at what I'd done to my knee. So it's safe to say that I completely butchered the knee. The video that I put up on Instagram last Sunday, where you could see it bleeding, just doesn't show the damage that was done at all. It looked like a dog had latched onto my knee and not let go for about 10 minutes. So I'd done quite a bit of superficial damage on the surface, and Sunday afternoon I thought, I've maybe got away with this here. It doesn't feel too bad, but as the weeks went on and the wound has started to heal, the pain kind of beneath the knee, bruising and so on, has kind of has increased a little bit, and we've kind of turned a little bit over the last few days. I've got a couple of jogs in, but whether I can race this Sunday, it's currently Friday morning, I still don't know. If the race was in an hour's time, I couldn't race. So as we said off air, I'm not really bothered. It's a tune-up race on the road to London. It's not the goal race. I was due to taper this week anyway, so it hasn't really negatively impacted training. In fact, it'll have allowed me to freshen up. But yeah, that's what happened last Sunday.
And that is the quickest weekly brief or debrief, I should say, we've done so far. So yeah, look, I guess it's just really important to accept the fact that these kind of things happen, like injuries happen, and especially when they're things like this that is really unavoidable. It's not even like it's a soft tissue injury or an overuse injury where it kind of can be avoided sometimes just by being a bit smarter with training or just wearing the right shoes, so on and so forth. But man, when you eat it, like as the cyclists will say, like when you eat dirt, it's like, man, you just gotta take the L, recover, because it's not worth kind of the hassle of then slowing down recovery. It's the same thing we mentioned a couple of weeks ago about getting sick. It's just the same thing. And yeah, like you said, hopefully, or if there is a miraculous recovery in time for Sunday, that's fantastic. But if not, it is what it is,
It's not the end of the world, man. It's just a run at the end of the day, isn't it? And yeah, the acceptance part is the most important part. I think 4 or 5 years ago, 3 years ago, I would have been really upset about it, and like this week I would have been in a bad mood because of it. But no, I've turned that corner quite a while ago, and you start to realize that there are far bigger things in life than a race. And even though we care about it and we want to do well and it's enjoyable, it's like there's bigger problems, and yeah, I'll be grand.
And hey, look, it does mean that this is the first time where in fact, I'm almost certain that I've had a bigger mileage week than you this week, mate. Which is which is saying something. And I'll break down my week a little bit, just again because for those that for whatever reason didn't listen to last week, I've got a 5K on Monday, which is a public holiday or a bank holiday as we like to call it in the UK. So that'll be Monday morning, and that means that my taper officially started the Monday gone. Like we said, it's Friday evening for me, but I did like a really good. I had 28K last Sunday, which was again just kind of not necessarily simulating the race, but it was race practice in the sense that I was going over my fueling, like practicing taking on gels, and I was a bit more mindful about what I ate the morning of and the night previous, just so I can get into a habit of eating certain things. And that run was really, really solid. So for those that don't know, the area I run, which is Sunbury mainly in kind of northwest of Melbourne, is very hilly. There is a heck ton of incline, and over 28K, I ended up averaging about 4:44 pace, I think, per K, which
All
is,
the fours.
yeah, all the fours. And I remember that specifically because it was all the fours. And I guess my goal pace, again, it's hard to know because I've not run a marathon, but my goal pace for Ballarat is probably about 4:15. And you might say, oh, that's way off for 28Ks. Well, what I'd say is that the 28Ks that I did was I'd say not very comfortable, but it was definitely comfortable. And Ballarat's pretty much flat as a pancake. And I even during that run was listening to the Inside Running podcast, and they were talking about the Ballarat Marathon and saying that they redid the course this year to make it even flatter to try and get faster times. So the fact that I'm running this kind of run on hills and able to on the flats, I was like pretty comfortably doing the 4:30s. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm on after a little bit of a taper once I've got some carbons on, because again, I was doing this in the Super Blast 2s, which they're not slow shoes by any
Yeah,
sense,
they're
but
definitely not our issue.
they're not a race shoe. No, it's all about cushion and comfort. So you get a pair of the Pro 4s on my feet and a bit more kind of attention to fueling and tapering. I reckon I'm got a bit of confidence now. So
Good, mate.
yeah,
It's good to
that
hear that.
was that
Yeah.
was definitely the highlight of the week. And then since then, it's just been a gradual decline in volume and intensity. And now we are, like I said, Monday morning is the 5K, and it is Friday evening at the moment. I'll have a day off tomorrow, and yeah, I felt a little bit maybe flat last 2 days. Could be because again we were talking off air about this, but could be because when you're so used to quite high volumes and quite high intensities, and again I'm not pushing like super high, but enough that the nervous system is almost in this kind of constant state of fight or flight. The kind of the sympathetic nervous system is holding things off with adrenaline. Soon as that drops down a little bit, the volume comes down, the intensity comes down, it lets in a little bit of fatigue. You might pick up little colds and stuff, and I feel like that's what's been happening the last 2 days. But I'm feeling better now than I did yesterday morning. That was just feeling a little bit rough, but I'm confident now that I'll have a good weekends and nothing too crazy. Keep things quite low key, and then go into Monday morning like ready for it, man.
Brilliant, mate. Brilliant. Can I just ask, sounds like you've had a really good week of training. And yeah, you mentioned that the potential for a slight cold or something coming in. And again, we mentioned just before we started recording when we were having a chat, it's like in a taper, you can often have those, yeah, like you said, the nervous system's coming down and regulating, and homeostasis is being restored, and that can introduce some little colds or elements, but it can also be just complete, like the phantom. It can be, you feel like
100%.
you could be getting a cold or something, and it's actually something that's not leaving there. I remember before London Marathon in 2022, we were in the Airbnb on the Saturday before the race, the day before, and I was convinced I had COVID. I was absolutely convinced I had COVID. Felt like I was losing my taste and losing my smell. And I did. I tested because Kira was like, "Don't you test because you're fine. This is just in your head." But yeah, it was a phantom. It was an issue that wasn't even there. It's funny how the brain can play tricks. But I wanted to ask you, look,
Mm.
what's the longest distance that you have ever ran to date?
That was just before I started working with Coach David, and that was 36. I did
Okay.
two of those. I did two 36K runs, and I remember distinctly again finishing the first one. Like again, there was no target. It was just kind of get through the run, and I actually felt really good doing that distance. And it was probably I think I averaged around just below 5 minutes per k And I was like, yeah, my confidence really went up from that. And then a couple of weeks later, I did it again, and it absolutely destroyed me. And I remember kind of getting to about 28, and I was like, I spoke to my partner. I was like, I had to come home and have a drinks break. And I now know I probably should have just kind of like come in and stopped because it wasn't doing me any good. But yeah, that's kind of when I realized I was a little bit out of my depth, and I was like, I need to speak to a coach here because I'm not sure what I'm doing is helping.
Yeah, no, I mean that's kind of the point, that the reason why I asked you the question is because it's a point that I kind of wanted to make. It's like, whenever you're training for, let's say, your first marathon, or you're going to a distance that you've never gone to before, if the furthest that you've ran is, let's say, 30 Ks, and you're planning to run 32 or 33, or you're just in your block for your first marathon as you are now. And I think you're a very unique case, Luke, because you're like almost much further on in terms of it's hard to explain this. Like,
Mm.
you're running your first marathon, but it's kind of like you're not running your first marathon, because
Yeah, it's
you,
not
you
necessarily the
you're
time you'd expect for a
quite well
first marathoner.
developed. Yeah, and like you say, you have that background in the cycling, so that endurance base that exists within there, that is going to help you, and it has helped you with training so far. But I think the point that I'm really trying to make here is, a lot of people I find in their training, let's say they are training for their first marathon or their second marathon, and they're not the most experienced runner and haven't been running for years, is like, they're taking maybe training ideas, or maybe their coach is programming them. And for me, it's probably not the best thing to do, and it can be a setup for failure sometimes. It's like, and they're doing really key workouts within a long run. I think there's huge benefits of that if you're an experienced runner and you're trying to run faster in the marathon, and you're really trying to progress, and you're looking for different ways to train. But if it's your first marathon, and particularly if you're going to a new distance for the first time, if the furthest you've ran is 28K and you're planning to run 32, but you're also adding in bouts of intensity within that 32K long run,
Mhm.
I personally think that can be a recipe for disaster, because
100%.
we talked about volume and intensity the other day, and to simplify it, like, with a run 32 kilometers with bouts of intensity, you're moving the needle on both of those. You're
Hmm.
shifting the dial on both volume and intensity upwards, and I think that's a real recipe for disaster. And so, uh, piece of advice is, like, if you are running your first marathon, or you're thinking about adding some quote unquote specific work to your long run, and you've never ran that distance, I would maybe think twice, and just think about covering the distance, and don't think about the pace of that long run in relation to your marathon. So don't think to yourself, I've ran that long run. Sorry, I can't speak, mate. I've ran that long run at, let's just take an arbitrary figure of 6 minutes per K. There's no way that I can run my marathon at 5:15 per K. You know,
Hmm.
Training and racing are very explicit. They are, yes, of course, I always tell people they're explicitly linked, but they are two very different things. And yes, we do train to race, but I don't believe that you should make inference on your ability to race based on your training,
Hmm.
particularly like in those early stages, because your fitness is increasing so fast. You're going to be adapting to that training, and actually, the progression of your fitness is going to be, it's not an exponential curve, but it's definitely on a real upwards trend. So I guess, yeah, the point that I'm trying to make is, like, train smart, train within yourself, keep it pretty comfortable in the long run, and just think about covering the distance, and allow all of that training to come together, just like you are on race day, and you could surprise yourself with how fast you actually can run the marathon when
Hmm.
the training all comes together. You're fresh, and you're carved up. Importantly, So yeah, that's kind of the point that I wanted to make about the long run and training.
I think I'd just add to that, and this is something that David's really taught me. And again, again, shout out to David. We keep name dropping him. I know he does on occasion listen to the podcast. So, what's up, David? Yeah, it's that I think where I was going wrong is I was building my training, and again, I'm quite a novice runner in grand scheme of things. And when it comes to coaching, I've never run a marathon before. So I was kind of experimenting with myself, which again, it's better that I'm experimenting on myself than someone else, but still probably not the best idea. But what I was doing was basically building my whole training routine around being able to run a time in a marathon. And what David has the way he shaped my training is, let's just train to be a better runner. And
Yeah.
along the way to being a better runner, we're going to put races in there. And the races are going to do one of two things. They can act as a stimulus, the training stimulus, but they can also act as a test to say, okay, let's look at it as though, how is training going? Are you getting a better runner? Are you becoming a better runner? Well, look, I can use these races as a metric to guide that. And obviously I enjoy racing. I know I've only done one, but I loved it and I want to do more of that. So it's yeah, making it an enjoyable thing that is part of my running journey, as opposed to I'm gonna structure my training around a single race, because then you're missing the forest for the trees, which is a quote we like quite a lot on this podcast. So yeah, don't do what I did, and if you're unsure, definitely look into coaching. That's my real takeaway from all this, to be honest.
Yeah, that's the flow state mantra. Don't miss the
We
forest for
should
the trees.
we should get it on a
But
t-shirt or something.
that's not a bad shout. But
Let's do
no, I
that.
think that's a great way to put it. It's like, train the runner and train your body with. And I actually had this conversation with an athlete yesterday when I was looking at their kind of annual training plan. I was like, we were having a meeting basically, and we were zooming out and really looking at their year and how we're going to periodize things. And it was like, let's not train to be the runner that you want to be. Let's train the runner that you currently are and watch the progression happening, because two things, you're going to progress a lot quicker because you're training. It's the Goldilocks principle, right? It's like, let's not make the training too hot or too cold. Let's make the training just right for you.
Yeah,
And it's another cliche for you, but
we love cliches, love them.
yeah, I've took a bit of stick about it over the last couple of weeks from a few people, but and you're also going to enjoy the training a lot more because you're not overstretching. You're not pushing yourself to your absolute limit and becoming anxious about sessions. And like, when you get a runner training in that sweet spot, or the zone of proximal development, is what I really like to coin it as. It's that intensity that you're going to develop the most. It completely flips the switch in terms of enjoyment. It's like, I do talk about joy in running a lot, and being outdoors, being with friends, all that good stuff. But man, distributing your training intensity in the right manner can help you enjoy training more. Because your body isn't undergoing like a really awful stimulus a lot of the time. You're not making yourself sick in training. Yes, of course, there is a time and a place occasionally, as Steve Magnus likes to say, to go see God. But it's few and far between, mate. Especially if you're training for marathons. And you can, if you're racing throughout a year, you can go see God at the end of your races. When you're absolutely killing yourself to get to that line. But yeah, it's interesting stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, there is a place to see God, and training's not necessarily it, at least not all the time, especially for amateur runners. And I think that you put the cherry on the cake there. Like, wait till the end of your race when it's really fucking hurting. That is when you should be looking at your
Bury
lucky
yourself.
stars. Bury it.
Bury
Yeah.
yourself in that last few miles. And I mean, the thing about it is too, is that you will be so much, for me anyway, you'll be mentally prepared to do that if you haven't had to go there and training a lot. For me, you're mentally prepared to kind of go to the well in a race if in training you actually haven't had to do it too much. Yeah, training is great for callousing the mind and getting your body and mind fitter. But I do think that if you're constantly going to the well and having to dig into those reserves in training, man, come race day, you're just mentally fatigued. And it's just like, I've been there because I've kind of lost sight of this in the past, a few years back with my own running, because you're just grinding and grinding and grinding and grinding. And then come race day, you're flat. You want to turn up to those races filled with energy and kind of ready to, I always say, express your fitness and test your fitness. So, yeah, good training talk.
100%. And Yeah, look, on the I think I've just talking about my week, or off air we were talking about my week, and I even messaged you. This is a bit of a tangent, kind of a segue into something else, but on the topic of racing and running races, I've been aware. I checked the socials. I'm down with the kids. I saw that there was a new race shoe that dropped to start of the week, and that was the Saucony Endorphin Elite 2. And now, fun story, the Endorphin Elite 1 was actually the first race shoe I went looking for when I booked in my half marathon last September, and you couldn't come by it for love nor money. And I ended up going with the Alpha Fly 3, which is a fantastic choice in the end. But long story short, I saw that the second iteration was coming out, and look, aside from what is probably one of the most astronomical prices I've seen for a readily available super shoe, this is like not considering the, I think it's the Adidas Pro Evo 1 that's like
Mate,
$600.
you need to join AS coaching. We get 15% off sports shoes.
That is the cheekiest and smoothest plug I think I've ever seen
No,
in my
mate, I'm
life.
just joking. I'm just joking. You're on a great path. You're on a great journey with David.
Yeah, no, it's but yeah, look,
I'm not trying to
I
poach you,
went.
miss. Sorry, David.
I wouldn't blame you. I'm hot property at the minute, so yeah. No, look, I'm not that
Your stock
egotistical, but
your stock has risen over the last month.
it has a little bit. Or it has now. Now that you've said that you
We'll
want me,
see.
I'm going to have loads of people coming after me.
We'll see how you get on the 5K on Monday. Then I'm coming after you.
We're gonna have to put like a transfer fee on me, like they do in football. Be on like here we go and stuff, like Fabrizio Romano giving me an announcement for or whatever. But yeah, look, long story short, I was pretty excited when this shoe came out, and I was like, whether or not I buy it, I was like, I want to try it on. I want to feel what this. It's 412 Aussie dollars, which is about, I want to say, just over 200 pounds. I think it's double. And I found it. I went to Running Warehouse, which is I can't remember the suburb it's in, but shout out to the guy that actually looked after me because he was having a great chat, and I didn't walk away with any shoes, and he was still really chill. So shout out to that guy. But he let me try them on. I went for a run, and I think the main point is the shoe just didn't fit right. Like they were very reminiscent of the Adios Pro 4s, which I know you've not run in, but they kind of really feel like that when it comes to the cushioning and just how they felt underfoot. But the problem I had was that I like to spread my toes. I'm quite into my foot health, and I try and walk around barefoot as much as I can, at least at home. And as soon as I put them on, even in like multiple sizes, a size that was too big, in fact, I was like, these are really rubbing on the outside of my toes. I was like, okay, maybe it's just like me being silly. I'll have a bit of a jog in them, and within seconds, I was like, these are unrunnable. Like this is a $412 shoe, and I just can't run in it. Like, never mind. I guess they're just not for me. And he had a couple of pairs of the Metaspeed Sky Paris, and he was like, look, why don't you, I've got a pair of these here, they're in your size, why don't you try them on? And I was like, yeah, sweet, I'm not running these, I'll have a quick go. And they're a lot more manageable. They're about kind of low 300s, 330, 320 Aussie dollars, which is about 115 to 120 pounds, I think. And
Yeah, maybe a little bit more
oh, a little bit
expensive.
more, sorry, I'm thinking 160.
The Asics is definitely cheaper than the Saucony and the Nike and the Adidas, but I don't think it's much cheaper. I still think it's about 220 quid. Because the Alpha Fly and
Okay.
the Saucony, we're talking like 280 pounds.
Oh, they're a lot more expensive where you are than where I am then, I
Yeah,
think.
so
Is it
perhaps they're just more expensive here.
B? Yeah, yeah. Well, there you go.
Anyways, yeah,
Um, yeah, I tried that on as well. And first off, like, man, that is a light shoe. I've not
yeah.
run in a lot of super shoes,
It's
but the
surprising how light it is because it looks heavier, isn't it? I always
it looks
find when you
chunky.
take a super shoe in your hand, yeah, that's chunky. We
Yeah.
you take that shoe in your hand and you're like, this should be heavier, and then you're just blown away with how light it is. It's unreal.
Yeah, and even running in it, I was like, man, I can't feel it on my feet. But again, still, as someone that's done a lot of running in the Alpha Flight 3 and a little bit in the Adios Pro 4, I was like, man, these just aren't doing it for me at all. And the takeaway there is, I'm getting to a point here. I was thinking, I went for a walk this afternoon, and I was like, I think it was Matt Fox was talking about it on one of the Sweat Elite podcasts a few months back, but he was saying how he reckons that although a lot of these brands, whether it's Nike, Adidas, Asics, Saucony, whoever it is, they've all got their own technology. They're all saying that, okay, look, we've got the best super shoe, or our super shoe can do this, it can do that, we can win this, we can win that. But the point is that realistically, the best super shoe is the one that you like and fits you best, regardless of price, right? So and this is something that Adam, you've said to me so much about shoes in general, not necessarily super shoes, but just running shoes as a whole. And this was the first time, because now I've actually tried on most of the big name super shoes. I've tried on the New Balance Super Comp Elite as well when I first tried them on, and I was like, realistically, I now know that just because like this Saucony came out, it was $400. I was expecting it to be the best thing I put on my feet ever, like ever. I was expecting it to like make dinner for me, sing me a song, and like kiss me goodnight for it, right? And I had it on my feet. I was like, man, this is rubbing, and it basically just feels the same as the Pro Evo 4, just a bit more painful around my toes. I'm like, well, yeah,
Why would you buy it?
why would you ever spend that much money and on something? And I think it's just, again, to anyone that is or is in a similar position to me, where you're kind of new to the super shoe game, it's like, don't just try them on, go for a run in them, and don't be fooled by price or marketing. The only, like, I do still think that the Alpha Fly 3, which is obviously very well marketed and it's a very popular shoe, I think it deserves it. I think that is still my favorite thing to get on my feet, and I just feel like a rocket putting them on. But someone else might not, right? Some, like, I know
Yeah,
for a fact, correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, but you've worn the Asics Metaspeed Sky and you really like them.
I did. Yeah, I mean, a few thoughts on what you've said there. I couldn't agree more, first and foremost. But yeah, it's like all of these super shoes have been around for quite a while now. When Nike originally released the original Vaporfly 4%, I believe was the name. Yeah, that's what it was. None of the other shoe brands had a competitor, and Nike just owned the market as all these other brands scrambled to build a shoe that could do the same thing, as in give you that extra energy return and that extra propulsion that the carbon plate gave you. But now that we're sort of 6, 7 years on, all the other shoe companies have caught up. They've all been tested extensively in labs. They've been tested by elite athletes. All of these shoes provide pretty much an identical amount of energy return, and also the governing bodies of the world in athletics, they have banned certain shoes and they allow other shoes because of that sort of even playing field. So that's the point to make first, is like, don't be fooled by reviews online. Don't be fooled by, influencers talking about their favorite shoe that they've been maybe sponsored by or they've been given, because chances are they're being paid to say that. And, if you are going to look into reviews, the first thing is like, review it yourself if possible. Get the shoe on your feet like you have, Luke. That's the best thing you can do. But also take the reviews with a pinch of salt, or look for an unbiased review. And just remember that the shoe that person recommends might not be the shoe for you. But the thing that I'm trying to say is, all of these shoes are pretty much sitting on a level playing field in terms of performance benefit. And then it's just a case of working out which one works best for you. I haven't tried on the Endorphin Elite, the Saucony shoe, and it's a shoe that I really want to try, because any Saucony shoe that I've worn, as long as I've ran, I mean, the Triumph is a shoe that I absolutely loved for easy mileage and running, until they went and changed it in the latest version, and I just don't like it anymore. But any Saucony shoe that I've tried, I've loved. I've absolutely loved. So for that reason, I do feel like Saucony suits my feet. Similarly, Asics, their easy running shoes, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about the Super Blast, is a shoe that I don't love. I just don't really like Asics. But like you say, I've tried the Metaspeed Sky and loved it. However, I had some issues with the outside wall of the shoe just pretty much shredding apart on first wear. So I returned those shoes because I figured out that they just weren't going to last for me and my running style. Um, But yeah, try on shoes if you can. I think people just get bought. Like the people that I speak to a lot, and people that ask me quite often about shoes, they've they've watched a lot of reviews online, and I don't watch any shoe reviews at all because one, I've sort of watched enough, in over the last few years, but mainly it's like I would rather just try a shoe myself, and you might be very surprised at what feels good on your foot in comparison to what someone says. you know um yeah, figure the best way to do it is like any shoe is figure out what works for you, and good on you for doing that.
I think the only thing I'd add to that, and I guess a little bit of a caveat, is I guess less so for super shoes because there are less of them, and they're in. I think there's a select maybe 10 at absolute most super shoes, and even within that, there's kind of 4 or 5 that are going to be the ones to go to. So if you're looking for super shoes, you're going to go to one of the big names, and you're pointed in the right direction. But the only thing is, I guess it can be hard. And even people come to me, I've got clients and people at my gym that ask me about running shoes all the time. There's so many, like that, let's call them daily trainers, or like non super shoe trainers that are out there, and there's a million different brands, there's a million different styles, and that can actually be really overwhelming. And that's why, in fact, I reached out to you, Adam, back in 2023 when I first started getting into running. So I was like, I'm just not, I have no idea where to start. Like, I don't know the difference from an Adidas Ultra Boost to a Saucony Endorphin Speed or whatever. And so I think the time where it might be good to look at just reviews to get you in the right direction is when you're just looking for a daily trainer potentially. But again, like you said, be skeptical. Don't just buy something online. You have to wear them, and if you can, get a run in them as well on a treadmill. And obviously be skeptical about who is giving you the information. Are they endorsed? Are they sponsored? Are they a running shoe company that are trying to push the latest model? Like the best thing, I think there's some like really good Reddit subreddits. There's the Running Shoe Geeks, which can be pretty okay, not amazing, but okay for reviews, and other similar YouTubers, people that are getting sent shoes for free and are getting them from multiple places. I tend to believe more than someone who has like a good relationship with a brand, because they're more likely to say, okay, I'm gonna lie about this shoe because you're giving me money to say that. Whereas I know Ben is Running is a really good one, because as far as I know, he's very objective about things, and he's sent running shoes from a bunch of different companies. And he's actually the reason I picked up the On Cloud Eclipse, which is their max cushioned shoe, and that is probably my favorite daily trainer, just average shoe that I've run in. And I've run in like 5 or 6 daily trainers now, and it's the one I just keep coming back to for my easy sessions, because it's literally exactly what I needed. And so I tend to listen to him. But yeah, that's for me. That's the only time I'd look at reviews, is if you just have no idea where to start.
Yeah. Yeah, and for me, just again to add on to that and piggyback on what you said, it's like when you find a shoe that works for you, like just go to that again. There's no need to change it. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. I absolutely adore my kind of love for the Saucony Triumph has shifted to the New Balance 1080. They're very similar shoes in many ways. They're like, I just call them like a mileage muncher. They just help you get through the miles. And if you're running high volume and running lots of easy miles, you need a good shoe like that. Good quality shoe as well. I feel like those shoes are built really well. They don't just fall apart. And that New Balance 1080, my current pair is destroyed. Like they are. I wore them yesterday for like a 4 mile jog, and I could feel the ground through them. They're just ready for the bin. So I'll be replacing those with the new pair because I like them and they work. So go
On that
back to
point,
the ones that
actually,
you love.
yeah, sorry to interrupt. I was gonna say on that point, because I'm relatively new to this, and all I've only retired one pair, and ironically, that is the pair of Endorphin Speed 3s, because I ran the heck out of them when I first started. But typically, how long would you or how many Ks miles would you put into a shoe before you consider retiring them?
I've stopped tracking the mileage in the shoes. I used to. I used to track it religiously. So it would really depend. When I did track the mileage on the shoes, there were shoes that I had 550 up to 600 miles, which is probably touching on 1,000 Ks. That was generally a shoe that I used just for jogging. However, if you've bought a shoe that you use for like faster sessions, especially like tempo workouts and intervals and even long runs where you're compressing the foam for longer periods of time at once without getting a break, because that's something that people need to remember. It's like a shoe that you run faster in is going to take a greater load. The foam in that shoe is going to take more load than a shoe that you run slower in. And similarly, a shoe that you run longer in is going to take more load, and that compression of the foam, whenever you take that shoe off your feet after a long run, that foam needs to recover. And so this is why building at least a small rotation is a good idea, because if you're wearing a shoe on a Sunday long run, you've worn it for 2 hours plus, well, you probably don't want to pick it up again on Monday morning. You kind of want to let that foam recover and, maybe pick up a different shoe. And I also think, having your foot in a different shoe is a good thing. But yeah, on those easy day shoes, probably anywhere between 350 and 500 miles, depending on the shoe. On a shoe that I run tempos and intervals in, probably a little bit less because of the speed that I'm running in the shoe and therefore the load that I'm applying to the shoe, the actual physical strain on the foam. But as I say, I don't track it anymore. I've just got to kind of learn how to feel when a shoe is done. And I just feel like that shoe, I always say it bottoms out, and it's really hard to describe what that means, but that New Balance 1080 has bottomed out. It's not giving me any energy return. It's not giving me even any support anymore. I can feel my foot is having to do a lot more work in the shoe than it once was. And there is a time when that starts to kind of degrade and the shoe's still fine to run in. But what I tend to do is when I feel that starting to occur in the shoe is I'll not wear it for 10 or 12 miles anymore. I might wear it for 4 or 5 miles at a time. And just it gets kind of relegated to a short easy day shoe as opposed to a longer easy day shoe. Or I might use it for some warm-ups and cool-downs before my key sessions that I'm wearing maybe a carbon-plated shoe in. And then eventually it gets retired and my dad gets it for cutting grass, or it goes to charity or whatever, or I use it for just walking.
That's the true meaning of recycling there. But again, the
Nothing
only
goes to waste.
follow-up, no, never. So what about race shoes? What about things that the Alpha Flies, the such,
Yeah, again,
such things?
that's quite a tricky one. Again, I don't track the mileage on them. I think you just know, mate. Do you know? I think when you have ran on it enough, you just start to realize when it's not giving you back what you wanted. What I would also say is, if you've had a race shoe or a carbon plated shoe, obviously money comes into play here because these things are expensive. So, like, you want to be thinking financially smart. If you are going to use a shoe for races and you want to get the most out of the shoe, you really want to save it for races. Now, with the caveat here that you actually want to do a bit of practice and training in the shoe, because, there is kind of a couple of schools of thought here on wearing your race shoes and training. A lot of people would say, don't wear your race shoes in training so you get all the benefit from the shoe on race day. So when you put that shoe on your foot on race day, you feel fast, you feel like you're ready to go. And I can see where that's coming from. I really can. And I agree to some extent. But I also believe that wearing your race shoe in training is essential, because when you run in a carbon plated shoe, there is no question there is some adjusting and getting used to it. And I do believe that your gait and the muscles that you load and the tendons that you load, particularly through your posterior chain, your hamstrings, your glutes, your lower back, are significantly different to the muscles that you load when you are a daily trainer. Like, for example, I think in most trainers, you load your calves quite a bit, or your calves, but in those carbon plated shoes, you don't. So you have to be careful with that. And for me, wearing the race shoe and training is important. But then to come back to the point that we were talking about really is like how long. Yeah, I guess you kind of know. And then what I do when I'm not racing in a shoe anymore is I relegate it to training. So I just train in the shoe. I'll have a new race shoe that I'll wear on race day. And that means that I'm kind of getting used to the shoe that I'll wear in a race. As that shoe is yes, it's getting worn out. So it's not giving me as much energy return, but I'm still getting used to wearing that shoe. And then I have a fresher pair that is going to give me more energy return in the race. Yeah, for race day itself. The other thing about wearing that race shoe and training, sorry, look, to keep going on here, is you definitely recover faster. You know, if you're training for a marathon and you're doing a marathon specific long run with 16 miles at marathon pace or 4x5k at marathon pace or whatever the session might be in your race, and you stick those carbon plated shoes on, you're pulling up a lot better on the Monday morning than you would if you wore daily trainers. Granted, the daily trainers do have a lot more protection than what they used to. You're not wearing a racing flat or something that is going to really beat up the calves, but yeah, you recover a lot faster, so there's benefit there as well, and it's always this cost versus reward thing. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess just to clarify as well, because you did mention the financials there as well, and I know for a fact I've had a lot of people being like, "What? Like, where are you getting all this money for shoes, or why do you need so many shoes?" And there is reason to it. I guess people that aren't maybe so familiar with, because most people, when you talk about running, people do maybe 1 or 2 runs a week. Some people might not even do that. They'll just kind of get up and run when they feel like it. It might end up being like 2-3 times a month. But when you're consistently doing high mileage or relatively high mileage, there is research to support that if you have a rotation of running shoes, and that isn't necessarily the same shoe, just different, just newer versions, for instance. So like I wouldn't have 6 versions. Let's say I run 6 times a week. I wouldn't have 6 versions of the on cloud eclipse, but actually having different shoes with different amount of cushioning, with different technology, with different stack height, with different X, Y, and Z. Each one will work slightly different muscles in whether it's the foot or the soft tissues as well. And so it prevents overuse in any single area, which can then help obviously injury prevention and just how well you're able to tolerate running as a whole. So that's the reason why, for instance, my daily rotation of trainers goes from anywhere 4 to 5 different pairs in a week, and I'm sure for Adam it's very similar, if not even more. And then again, thinking about the race shoes there as well, like unfortunately they are very expensive, but they don't last forever. And if you're someone that's racing a lot, unfortunately spending a one-off amount on one pair is only going to see you through a handful of races, especially if it's like a marathon. Realistically, if you're like a heavier runner, like I won't beat around the bush here. If you're a heavier runner, you're going to put more forces through that foam, through that sponge, as Adam was saying. So it's going to get worn down a lot quicker, and you might only get through a couple of races before it gets relegated to a training shoe. But then if you're racing again in a few months' time, it's like, well, I guess you don't have to wear a carbon shoe, you don't have to wear a super shoe, but if you want to run at your best, it's probably a good idea. And the whole recovery thing as well is absolutely like bang on the money. That's the reason, part of the reason why these shoes are so good is because they take away a lot of that musculature in the foot, and they put the pressure onto the muscles in the quads, in the hamstrings, the calves, and the Achilles. So it's you're relying on spring as opposed to actually taking the impact. And
Yeah.
yeah,
You have to be really careful with the stability as well. A lot of these carbon plated shoes and race shoes aren't very stable, so be careful with that too. Like if you're a runner that feels like you need more stability, as in if anyone's watching on YouTube, you can see my hand. If this represents my foot, and if your foot in a shoe feels like it's kind of going like this quite a lot, you know, and you feel like it's not stable, it's like a boat that's rocking from side to side. I mean, you might be better to work with, you know, a non-carbon plated shoe that has more stability, and that's going to actually keep your feet healthy, and actually allow you to get through your training block and actually run comfortably on the day. Because if you're running a marathon, you want to be comfortable, because it's a long way. 26.2 miles on your feet, it's a long way, and being uncomfortable for 26.2 miles isn't going to be conducive to good performance, no matter how fast the shoe is. But the other point that I just wanted to quickly make, sorry Luke, and this is a bit of an anecdotal point, because I haven't read any research that relates to this, and I'm sure there is some stuff that exists out there. And hopefully any physiotherapists or podiatrists that listen to this don't think that I've butchered it. But I think for me anyway, in my own experience, this is my own running experience and running shoe experience here is like I believe that having a shoe rotation is really important. And when I say a shoe rotation, I do mean having 3 or 4 shoes for me running quite high volume. That might be 1 or 2 shoes, or sorry, 2 shoes or more for someone that's running less volume. It could be more shoes for someone if that's what you're into. But having 3 or 4 shoes in a rotation at a time has huge benefit because from a foot health and lower body health standpoint, and even lower back and whatever, just general health, and I'm talking about the musculoskeletal system here, muscles, bones, tendons, ligaments, having that shoe rotation is crucial. And I find when your foot is going into a different shoe every day or every other day, or your feet are even when you're running like twice a day, not wearing the same shoe in the morning and the evening, putting your foot into a slightly different position, just feeling like your foot is in a different shoe each time kind of loads the foot in a different way. So the forces, or the load on the foot and the load on the musculoskeletal system is differing slightly when you go from shoe to shoe, because we all know the geometry of shoes are different. The heel to toe drop of different shoes is different. The foam in shoes is different. How wide the toe box is different. Like I say, all those different things. That changes from shoe to shoe and brand to brand. So I personally find like having 4 or 5 shoes at a time, 3, 4 shoes, whatever, it keeps your foot guessing a little bit. And for me, that actually allows my foot to be healthier and my body to be healthier, because if you're constantly putting your shoe into the same position of a shoe every single time, well, you're just almost exaggerating the load. Like, let's say you overpronate a little bit and you're wearing a pair of New Balance 1080s and that's all you're wearing. It's like over time that overpronation is just going to become exaggerated, because it's just going to fall further and further into that position in the shoe. This is just kind of my thoughts on it. And you're just going to load and load and load the muscles and the tissues and the tendons in the exact same way every single time. And that's just going to become worsened over time as the foot just slips into those positions. Whereas you chuck a slightly different shoe on the following day, it's like, okay, your foot's actually having to maybe move into a slightly different position here. These are very small details, but I think it makes a massive difference. And again, hopefully I haven't butchered that. If you're a podiatrist or a physio, maybe you can jump into the DMs and give me the eloquent version of that. But that definitely helps. It definitely helps to load the foot in different ways for me.
Yeah, I mean, I work with physios and one in particular, shout out to you, Anthony, at the Movement Institute. I've worked with him, and he was saying like something really similar. And the way I like to look at it is like a memory foam mattress. People buy them because you sink into the same spot every time. And it's the same thing with your shoes. So 100% bang on the money with that. That's the way I like to look at it as well. And this is coming from someone who I have an issue with overpronation, not necessarily because that's how I run, but because how certain muscles aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. But that's something I'm getting addressed. But yeah, it's a really good point. And I think it's something that I find is really pronounced when I wear my training pair of Alpha Flies, because I've done so much running in them now that it's so obvious that I kind of cave in. And again, we're going YouTube mode, so you're gonna have to watch this if you want the full image. But I definitely, like, as I run, I kind of tilt in, and it then puts a lot of strain on the tibialis anterior on the outside of the ankle. So definitely something that you'll notice gets worse, and it's basically overuse. That's what it is. You're getting an overuse injury very slowly, and in some instances you can see it happening before your very eyes. So yeah, really good.
Whereas you put on a different shoe on there, it's gonna kind of move your foot into a slightly different position and hopefully kind of offset that load, or lessen that load over time. And yeah, again, that's only a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. Look, we've been talking about shoes for a little while, and before we kind of wrap this up, because this is now unofficially become the shoe episode, I want to know, Adam, what's your plans for the weekend? Like, we talk about running a lot, we talk about this, but let's say you're not racing on the weekend. What's the plan? What's going to happen?
Yeah. Well, we booked, as I mentioned before to you, while we were chatting. I booked an Airbnb for myself and Kira, a couple of months ago now. So we're still going to head off and stay in the Airbnb. Um, Decision on the race will probably come probably Saturday afternoon. So at the minute, I'm not racing, just given the feeling at the minute. Again, I can run, and I could run a half marathon right now, but I couldn't run a half marathon at race pace. And similarly, running a half marathon at race pace is going to have that negative impact on next week. So if I'm not racing, I want to be still recovering and able to train next week and continue to train for London next week. So it's all up in the air a bit at the minute, mate. As I say, we are going to head off on Saturday morning. We'll stop for some breakfast at a nice spot on the road. And yeah, Sunday morning, our Airbnb is pretty close to the race. So we'll probably go watch the race, or at least watch a little bit of it if I'm not racing. And then, yeah, up the road again Sunday night. What about you, mate?
No major plans. So in preparation for Monday, the idea was to keep things pretty chill. But I think, as I've been saying the last couple of weeks, I've still got my mum and her partner over from the UK. So really just having family time with my missus and my little ones. So I think tomorrow the plan was to maybe find like there's some wildlife sanctuaries all over kind of Melbourne or just outside of Melbourne, because obviously us Brits, we
Nice.
love seeing like wombats and dingoes and stuff. Like that's the stuff we don't get at home. So we'll find somewhere to go see some wildlife. I love wombats. They if you
Yeah,
did you
cool.
see wombats when you were over here in
No,
Australia? No, they
no.
are the
Just
the
at the zoo.
best.
We did see them at Australia Zoo.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've not seen a wild one to be honest with you, but yeah, they are the most fun things. They're like little, like a mix between a pig and a guinea pig with really weird faces, but they're like mega cute. I flipping
Yeah,
love
they're different.
wombats, so I'm hoping
Cool.
that tomorrow I'm going to see some wombats, and then Sunday's my like errands day, so we take it super chill. We might go on a few walks. I've got a little shakeout run at some point in the morning, and I was fortunate enough that my Chelsea played this morning, and we won, which is fantastic. So now I don't have to
Yeah.
worry about football
Well,
till Monday.
I was just gonna say it's worth mentioning Liverpool this weekend, but just before I do, while you're on the story of the Australian animals,
Yeah, go on.
when I was training for Melbourne Marathon, we were living in Mansfield. I don't know if you know Mansfield.
I actually don't
It's
know.
a country town. Do you know Mount Buller? Have you heard of
I
that?
I've heard of it. I don't know where it is.
Mount Buller, it's in Victoria. It's basically the ski resort in Melbourne, which anytime I tell people we worked on a ski resort in Australia, they can't really wrap their head around it. But Mansfield is the town that we were living in, which is the town that you come to before you actually head up the mountain. So we were living in Mansfield at the time, and I was training away for Melbourne Marathon. But there was one morning I was out. I was doing all my running early morning because it was pretty dangerous in the night. The roads were all like gravel roads. There was no street lighting at all. But there was one morning when the sun was coming up, and I was running along this really long gravel road, and this kangaroo came out onto the road. It kind of freaked me out a bit because these things are huge,
Mm.
and I've seen the I've
That's
seen the videos
dangerous.
online of the kangaroos boxing,
Yeah.
and I didn't fancy getting boxed by this kangaroo, but this kangaroo, mate, it was the most wild experience ever, and I like when I got home I was buzzing. But this
Yeah, you would
kangaroo, and
be.
I wish I had my phone with me at the time, or I wish I whipped it out to take a video, but this kangaroo came out onto the roadside and started running alongside me for like probably a kilometer. It was the most surreal thing. It pretty much joined me. It ran at the same pace. I'm actually getting a bit excited talking about it because I'm remembering
I
it. But
can
the sun was coming
see.
up. It was like this Aussie scene that I'd dreamed my whole life. Running alongside this kangaroo. It was definitely a moment, but that was class. It was surreal.
I got so many questions. We should start a new podcast because I'm like I've got so many things I want to ask. But
Yeah.
I could just picture. I don't know why I'm picturing you in one of those Aussie hats with the dangling corks, the fly hats. I don't know why, but firstly, yeah, those like I forget what they call them, like the big red ones, the big red alpha males. Like they will tear you apart. They are like genuinely seen as one of the like most dangerous bits of wildlife in Australia because I think there's videos you'll find of them like ripping apart dogs because they've got like talons, bro. They are mad.
And
Um,
all the cars have the big like cage. I can't even remember what it's called. The big bumper on the
yeah,
front.
yeah,
Again, I'm
yeah.
butchering this because if you hit a kangaroo,
Totaled.
your
It's
car is
done.
rode off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And wait, so this is quite far outside the city, as far as I'm aware. Was this while you were working at St. Ali or before?
No, long before it. So whilst
Okay,
we were doing our regional work,
I see.
Mansfield's 3 hours north of Melbourne. So we weren't living in Melbourne at this time. Uh, this is during our summertime. So it was from I want to say it was from like mid May to September time. We did our regional work during that period in Mansfield, and then we moved down to Melbourne permanently after that. And it worked out really nicely because I was in the training block for the marathon. And like I said before, there was nothing else to do at the time. It was solitude. It was just work, eat, sleep, and
Yeah.
train. And then we came down to Melbourne about 10 days before the marathon. I felt like an East African athlete when they train up in the Rift Valley in
The
Kenya,
altitude. Yeah, yeah,
coming down to the city.
yeah.
Because I was just out in the middle of nowhere training for this 3 months. It really was solitude. Like I was just coming home every evening, getting washed after work, getting something to eat. The guys that we were living with, I remember really distinctly, they were watching Love Island every evening, and I was just jumping in the bath. I couldn't watch it. I think I watched the first week of it, and I was like, I can't watch this, guys. So I was jumping in the bath every night and sticking on the Tour de France highlights from the day
Oh,
because it
look at
was our
this.
summertime, our European
Yeah.
summertime, and it was just perfection. And then getting to bed for probably about 8:30 or 9 o'clock and sleeping through. So yeah, it was a great time, a great way to train for my second marathon. It really was like a training camp. I was working pretty hard as well, and having to eat a lot because the work was physical. And so yeah, that was cool. But that experience with the kangaroo, that'll stick with me. It was magic.
It's funny, you've gone from getting excited about thinking about the kangaroo running alongside it, and I've got excited, not necessarily thinking about you in the bath watching the Tour de France, but the thought of being in a bath, being in a bath and watching the Tour de France, that's like, man, I'm just thinking, being like, and now as a dad, like, I don't have time to watch stuff in the bath, dude. But if
Yeah,
I did, if I was in a bath watching Tour de France after like a hard day of training work, I'd be like, I've made it, man.
perfection.
I've
Yeah.
done it. I'm done.
Yeah. I used to
Uh,
crack open a bit. I used to have I used to just crack open a beer almost every evening, just lying in the bath, sipping a beer and watching Tour de France. I had this skateboard. I'm really painting the picture here, but
I love it.
I had this skateboard. Well, it wasn't mine. It was just at the house we were staying in, and I laid the skateboard across the bath, and then just propped my iPad up on the skateboard. So it was just like it was my own little. That was my hour of peace and quiet and solitude. While the housemates were busy watching Love Island, but yeah, it was a good time. But yeah, I did just want to mention Liverpool as well, mate. I don't know whether you
Okay,
seen
go
the
on.
game the other night, but
I was working.
we
I saw the score. I know the score, but I was,
yeah
yeah.
we
Always
stole
find a
it.
way.
We absolutely stole it from PSG. They were outstanding, and
Yeah.
probably they battered us for 90 minutes. And Harvey Elliott comes on, replaces Mo Salah, and with his first touch, bags a winner in I want to say about the 86th, 87th minute. So I was shouting and screaming in front of the TV in complete disbelief. Um, and yeah, just Allison, our goalie, he needs a shout out because he was a brick wall all night. He showed his worth on Wednesday, and it was class. Now we still have to play the return fixture in Anfield, but to take that as a 1-0, oh man, we were, like I say, we were battered for 90 minutes.
I think that's the sign of a title winning team. I hate to say it as a Chelsea fan, but the,
I've
the,
got everything
the,
crossed.
the games where you find a way. It reminds me of like Chelsea under Mourinho, where it was just like those 1-0 wins. They add up. That's the sign of a title winning team. And I'll just kind of top you because I was up at 4:30 this morning to watch Chelsea play the mighty Copenhagen, and we had a terrible first half, but we came back to win it 2-1. And yeah, shout out to Reece James and Enzo Fernandez. I'm sure they're watching, listening, obviously, because they're both avid running enthusiasts. But yeah, no, look, we're not the same at the minute. I'm not gonna deceive myself. I know we're in very different boats, but yeah, Chelsea will get back up there eventually. But look, Adam, before we digress too much, I think it's probably a good time to wrap things up there. Anything you want to leave the listeners with before we head off?
No, I just think we've had a few laughs there over the last 10 minutes, and something that I just remembered was I've been listening to the episodes when they come out on a Wednesday, and whenever we edit our episodes, my laughing sounds like someone's being like killed in the background here. You get this like I've just realized I do this, and yeah, every time I do it now I realize, because when I finish laughing I do this like sharp inhale through my mouth, and you can hear it in my throat, and that's all coming out on the podcast at times. So every so often you'll just hear this noise, and it's the end of my laugh, and it's a strange one. So if you've heard it, I'm really trying not to do it now, but if you've heard it on the podcast this week, last week, or the week before, I apologize, because it's a strange one.
We're gonna have to practice our laughs. Like I've been trying to be really aware of my my likes and my ums and my R's, and now we're gonna have to be really self-conscious about our laughing, so we're not getting pulled up by viewers. How fun is that? But
yeah, well, that's maybe something I need to work on. I'm not conscious of the thing of how I speak or what I say. No, I know we've had conversations where you haven't been able to understand a word.
Actually, I do better than most people, I think. Again, I think it's having the British background that I'm pretty good with most, like whether it's Welsh, Scottish, Irish, Northern Irish. I'm pretty good with the accents. So I like to think that it's the Aussies that are probably having a really hard time hearing what the fuck you're saying. But yeah, look, guys, I think that's a really good place to end it. It's been a nice change to last week. We've gone from maybe sounding a little bit deeper into something a bit more lighthearted. And again, I just want to thank everyone. If you've made it this far, well done, because it's been a ride. But yeah, again, if you have the time and you enjoyed the podcast, feel free to share it, to like it, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. It does mean the world to us. And yeah, we're all going to pray for Adam. Hopefully he gets a quick recovery. Whether or not you race on Sunday is what it is, but let's hope you recover quickly anyway. And yeah, next week, hopefully we'll have a decent 5K time to chat about for me.
Yeah,
so
that's what I just wanted to say. Look, good luck to you on Monday in your 5K. Monday's also... so much. No, it's not, sorry. Next Monday is St. Patrick's Day. Apologies.
Nearly there. We'll have a St. Patrick's Day episode next. Don't you worry about it.
We'll have a party, mate.
We'll have a jig. Fantastic. But guys, thank you so much for making it this far, and we're looking forward to, I guess, podcasting for you again soon. Take care.